Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, wherever you are in Region 9. I am Jackie.
And hello. My name is Isamar Garcia.
And welcome, Region 9ers, to our September podcast. Hey, Isamar,
What's
know
up?
what September brings?
Heck yeah, it's National Preparedness Month.
I thought it was Pumpkin Spice Latte Month or season. But it is. Yeah.
Had to.
I did it.
You did. You went there.
I did. But no, you're right. Besides pumpkin, it is National Preparedness.
That was what I was hyped for.
It is. Okay, so what's going on with National Preparedness Month? Because I know this is like the holiday for all EMs and preppers and everything.
Essentially, it's pretty much the only time that we get to like hop on the train and participate with such a one of the national months that are out there, because there are plenty, but definitely one that we can get behind as emergency management professionals, because then we're just like, yeah, make a plan. Remember all that stuff? Yeah. Go change out your food, recycle your water storage. Like that is this is the time where it's like we get to geek out, like really geek out. So I'm prepped. This year is actually leaving a legacy. So what are the things that you're doing to help leave a legacy? Reach out to others, find out a way to prepare them, make a plan, the communications plan. There are many ways in order to help your neighbor. And just by helping, you actually create that legacy normally, organically. So National Preparedness Month.
Yay!
And pumpkin spice lattes.
Exactly. And Labor Day. Yes, pumpkin spice latte. But one thing we're doing at IEM Region 9 is we're going to, sorry, I'm like doing your role on this one, but we are going to celebrate National Preparedness Month. And I know one way we asked you guys last month was start tagging us on everything that you're doing about preparedness, whether it's your Go Kids, you're doing your map your neighborhood plans, if you're doing an exercise, whatnot. Please tag us, because we will feature you. We will definitely feature you. We're going to share your information, and who knows, maybe IEM will do a special feature on people who are overly participating. Who knows? We'll see. But I know you have a whole series coming up too with social media, right?
We are definitely working on a series for National Preparedness Month. So more to come.
Awesome. And I know you have a bunch of other updates that are actually very important to our region. And I'll let you start with one that is close to a lot of our hearts.
It brings a somber note to it, but we definitely wanted to highlight the passing of Jerry Quinn. So Jerry Quinn, a longtime standing member, a longtime pillar of the emergency management community. We actually lost a very highly respected colleague. He passed away a few weeks ago to a long, courageous fight with cancer. So he actually dedicated about 30 years in the field. He was very much a risk taker, and he was, oh man, did he enjoy chasing down like proposed legislation, communicating with politicians. And he was just all about the legislation activity. So for those who had the pleasure of knowing Jerry, we've lost a friend in our profession, definitely, and one who's put a lot of smiles on a lot of faces. So rest in peace, our friend.
Definitely rest in peace, and thank you, Jerry. And one of the things that was very active in our organizations with his state organization, and also with IEM. And Jerry, talking about legacy with National Preparedness Month, he left a huge legacy, and mostly of being involved. So Isamar, if we want to follow his footsteps, how can we be involved with IEM Region
9? Chime into the legislation that's happening around all legislation that's happening around emergency management. They start to trickle in, and as long as you're keeping a good, fingers on the pulse right? So as long as you're being in tune to what's going on in the world and how it will eventually impact emergency management, that's one way to get involved. Another is to make sure that you're constantly collaborating with professional organizations and expressing the concerns that you have as an emergency management professional. Jerry was a very big proponent on creating those partnerships and creating stronger ties with relationships and just with the partner agencies. So whenever there was a legislation position, like he took the groundwork and actually paved the way. So that's what we can do too.
Definitely. And reach us, come out and reach us in our email. I'm going to probably butcher it, so I'm going to have you do it because I know we changed it up a little bit. The email is
iaem.r9publicaffairs@iaem.com.
And we will put that in the comments too, because we'll lose it. And lastly, annual conference is coming up. There's some really good news about podcasting and maybe collabs.
We're actually going to be featuring the annual conference committee chair. So this year's chair is fulfilled by the committee chair is Dwayne Hagelins. I believe I may have butchered that last name, but he will correct me on next month's podcast as we get prepped for the annual conference in none other than Savannah, Georgia.
Georgia. Okay, that's why I was on choir there. Awesome. So there's time to register. If you're on the fence, you gotta tune in. Please tune in, but get your tickets. It's worth it.
We'll probably be going over some what to do at conference, even if you're new or just ready to get some tips and tricks.
Very much so. Definitely. So stay tuned for October. So we're having fun. It's National Preparedness Month. And we always talk about how do we do our Go Kids? How do we do our planning? How do we prepare our pets? How do we do this? But as emergency managers, many times we think about our community and the individuals in our community. And sometimes we tend to forget the business community. So the business community is a huge part. I'm spitting a statistic I learned through the time of COVID, but I'm not going to take credit for it, but I will say the statistic, and then the person who shared this statistic with me is our guest today. So 80% of small businesses have savings only up to 28 days. So why is that important for emergency managers for response and recovery and planning? And so for today, that's what we're going to talk about. Business resiliency, especially our small businesses, and how emergency managers in the emergency management program can help re-engage and make our communities resilient, but through the economic and business front. So I want to introduce a person I had a pleasure working with during many incidents, but he is an amazing business owner. Jesse Torres is the owner and principal of a minority-owned consulting firm, Arroyo West, that specializes in economic and workforce development, particularly in the area of small business development and disaster preparedness. He also focuses on the response aspect and the resiliency programs. He is also the founder and creator of the podcast Hack My Business. So he's a seasoned person here. So I think he's going to outshine us today. And one of the things that I did love is the annual holiday social media campaign, 12 Days of Takeout. And that was to support.
Really looking forward to that one.
That is the best. We did it. It was one of my favorite things to do. He serves the community of the city of Los Angeles with Small Business Commission and the boards of associated students of UCLA, Go Bruins, alma mater, and Sustain Economic Enterprise of Los Angeles and Union Station Homeless Services. He was also a key member for the City of Los Angeles Business Operations Center and working with the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce. So, drum roll, please. Introducing Mr. Jesse Torres. Jesse!
What's going on? This is already my favorite podcast. Besides my own, this is already my favorite podcast. First of all, the music, which is on point. in the beginning. And shout out to Jerry. Rest in peace. I wish I had got to know him. What an amazing person. But yeah, I mean, you guys are the best. Already, I can tell that this podcast is changing lives every day.
Woo! So does that mean if we do well, you might be coming back?
Sure, anytime.
Yes. How about next? No, I'm kidding. I'm like, how about next week and the week after?
What's your calendars, huh?
What's your calendar looking like?
Well, thank you, Jesse, for being here. So, first question off, please tell us why disaster preparedness is so important to small businesses.
Oh my gosh, why is this so important? I mean, I can only come from a place of personal experience. I was my house in 1994 was about a mile away from the Northridge earthquake epicenter. My dad was a small business owner at the time, and it was for many years. He had a barbershop, and I remember all the glass in his barbershop completely shattered. And I remember just how unprepared we were for that, and that stuck with me, my entire life, and thinking how small businesses are often forgotten when it comes to disaster preparedness and the strategies around that. And in fact, I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, but when I was helping to write a new playbook for the state around, kind of disaster strategies and resiliency strategies, it was really interesting to find in the research I did that for a long time, small businesses were seen as critical to recovery, but not necessarily in need of recovery themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think there's just a lot of misconceptions about the role of small business, and also they often get neglected, when it comes time to including them in, say, like, local preparedness frameworks or even national frameworks.
You actually made the really good reference of when you were talking about the forethought of, or the afterthought rather, of small businesses. Like, you got to put on the life mask before you can put on someone else's. So,
100%. Yeah, and I think it's just that the world has changed. I mean, before, when a disaster incident was, say, like a singular incident or isolated to a particular city, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, everybody looked to like the local, retailers or whatever, small business for the community to really then lift everybody else out of their recovery, because that's really what people mean when they say, like, oh, we're back to normal. Normal means the ability to go to your local store and shop, go to your local restaurant. So take something like COVID, for example, where the small business community gets impacted so drastically, and just how out of sorts we were, right? When we didn't have the ability to get food the way we used to, we didn't have the place for community at the coffee shop, and everybody just became so obvious how important the small business fabric is to feeling normal again, right? And so what do you do when the disruption that happens really impacts small businesses on such a grand scale that it's just really difficult for them to contribute to the sense of normalcy anymore? It's just been a really interesting time.
Just one small thing.
Pandemic, whole pandemic ruined everything for everybody.
And I think the funny thing about small business is that, we have a way to go out, and we don't always think about, the end, what they need from us or how they develop. So what are some strategies that you've come up, or actually, let me back up, statistical facts. So I said that from you, I do steal this from you all the time, because when you first shared this, and knowing the area I was coming from, I fell flat on my face. And then on top of it, you had a statistic about the minority-owned business and preparedness. Oof, so can you share when a disaster hits about businesses and how horribly it is actually impacted, whether it's COVID or a civil unrest, or if it's an earthquake or fire? Just the statistics behind it, because I think as EMs, we don't see it that way.
Yeah, and it's actually even worse than how you put it, because so the study to bring in such a womp guest here, but not to make it even worse. There's a stat I like to reference, and I do it as part of our Outsmart disaster presentations. But there was a study done by Chase, JP Morgan Chase Bank, about a couple of years ago, and what they found is that for the median American small business, they have about 28 days of cash on hand to deal with any kind of crisis, right? But actually, if you look at, say, retail or restaurant, that goes down to 2 weeks. And anecdotally, and Jackie, you know this from us doing the work during COVID, what I saw in doing direct work for, say, the county or the LA Chamber and working with small businesses in LA County, I saw about a week. People had about a week's worth of cash on hand, right? And that's why you saw how critical the lifeboats of programs like the Paycheck Protection Program or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program became so critical, because literally you had people who just didn't have the cash to survive, right? And so they were able to leverage those federal programs, the city grants, like anything that emerged. They're just latching on for dear life. But yeah, isn't this? I mean, so you take the fact that you already have small business owners that are, their margin is so thin. Their livelihood is really based on, say, like less than a month's worth of cash, and then you take into account, just speaking on the minority piece, folks are coming from a place of inequity, right? Who don't have access to banking, who don't have, certain resources. It's hard for them to save for whatever reason. So you add that to the mix, it gets even harder. Or you could take the fact that, we have here in California, we have 4.1 small businesses, is the most out of any state, or we outpace Texas, New York by at least 1 million. But about 95% of those are sole proprietors. They don't have employees. They don't have a structure that keeps things moving forward without them. If they fall ill from COVID, right, there is nobody else to do the work. So, and imagine in that case where you're the sole provider for your household in, say, South LA, or other parts of the state that are low income, just how terrible it gets all at once, right? And I think we saw that in COVID, just like how real that becomes. And now you have, as we all know, disaster exacerbates social problems, right? So you just had this really incredible moment where it became so visible about that, how that all kind of comes together. So yeah, I'm such a downer, man. Like, Jackie, I don't want to be a downer.
I think that's it rings true, though. I mean, we've heard it before. I mean, very timely for National Preparedness Month, but we've heard it time and time again that preparedness, or just in general, the I guess preparedness would be the best way, but resiliency is really social economical based.
Yeah, you can't really separate it. I mean, it's very difficult to, or even when I think people don't quite grasp it because they don't. It's hard to see. Like I always remember in the Hill and Woolsey fires that took place in LA County and part of Ventura County. The small business owners that were actually most impacted were like the house cleaners, the landscapers who lived in, say, East LA or South LA, who had to take the bus. And the one they weren't accessing the information around disaster recovery in those areas like Malibu, because they didn't live there. And so they themselves weren't able to tap into things, simply because people didn't understand that the majority of those small businesses that were being impacted by that fire actually weren't located in Malibu. They're outside of Malibu, in far distant places, So there's just this lack of understanding. I always feel like I served as a small business advocate for Governor Brown. I always feel like the one thing I should have done more was really focus on data, because we have such poor data about our small businesses, what is their makeup? So because whenever disaster strikes, inevitably there's just a lot of misunderstanding about what resources are needed for those small business owners, because they don't know the majority of them are, say, independent consultants working out of their home, and that Wi-Fi is a really big issue. And then when you have 3 kids on Zoom, that then their business suffers, so it's just,
that makes sense. So I actually did some,
go ahead. No, I was going to say, don't worry about being a Debbie Downer on this one, because the truth is, it's imperative for us to hear the realities, so we can understand where we have to go when it comes to mitigation and preparedness. Because, when we think about it, we think, oh, wait, we need to tap into the Walmarts, the Home Depots, the larger corporate places. And we forget that we need to tap into the small local. And I know what I loved about COVID, and I know that a lot of people in our region, so in California, I know for a fact, but like in Arizona and Nevada, a lot of people were starting to see if they could source items from their local businesses first when the supply was available, because global supply was crazy. But even that supply chain resiliency forgets a lot about our small businesses too. So I'm not going to advocate for anything, but just say, hey, we might do research on that. But the supply chain also affected the small businesses. So 100%. It was kind of it's Yeah, it is like this.
It is.
It is, but it is important to hear the cold facts. It is cold facts. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to prepare for it. When you're opening a business, you're only thinking about your business plan, your comms, your whatever, but you're not thinking about the disaster portion because hey, that's not what gets you the loan
Right.
or that stuff to
Right.
start your business.
Yeah, it's not a revenue driver.
It
Yeah,
is not.
The more we know, the more we can plan.
that's right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So that was really important. I'm sorry, Yusa. Go for it.
Oh no! So I was actually doing some research myself, getting into some data prior to the podcast because we knew that we had you as a guest here. So I looked up Outsmart Disaster.
Sure.
Can you go ahead and tell our viewers what Outsmart Disaster is and why it is so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a statewide campaign here in California that, the basic idea is that we make it easy for businesses, nonprofits, and communities to become more prepared, more resilient to disaster. The original concept came out of the California Seismic Commission, and really the initial thought was around preparedness around earthquakes, natural disaster. It was based off of the Haywire, for folks here who are, I know we're all disaster nerds here, the Haywire toolkit. And actually, if you look at the original kind of imagery around what became Outsmart, it was really terrifying, like mountains and things getting distorted by earthquake. But then it kind of evolved, became adopted by the Business Consumer Services Housing Agency of the state, and then the California Association of Local Economic Development and their Academy for Economic Development came on board and helped kind of make it a larger initiative and much more focused around general resiliency. So we were brought on. It was actually one of my first projects under my new firm, Arroyo West, which I started back in 2019. And the original, as we all remember back then at the beginning of 2020, the original thought was that we were going to be doing a whole lot of in-person workshops across the state, encouraging communities to become resilient. That quickly became impossible to do because of COVID. And so we had to really switch to webinars when people were just getting used to Zoom. But the whole idea of it is really just to kind of go where communities are, work with champions and, local entities, economic development agencies, and give them the tools to kind of give, to walk through the principles of disaster preparedness, right? Understanding what your risk is, understanding what your potential scenarios could be, understanding what those different scenarios, what the impact will be upon your business, and then having a plan to deal with that, trying out the plan, repeating the plan, learning from the plan, et cetera. So really just try to kind of bring it down to the basics and give people the chance to really kind of, figure out how to adopt a resiliency plan for themselves in a way that makes sense. So hopefully that kind of captured it, but you can go to outsmartdisaster.com. The Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development is going to be becoming a really strong partner around that. We got some EDA, Economic Development Agency funding, administration funding to help kind of take it to the next level. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what it now will look like in this kind of post-COVID norm, right? Where we might go back to in person, maybe some more direct kind of interactions with folks, because I think it'll be exciting to see how the program evolves from here.
I think as far as like in person, I think we've gone like all the way to virtual, and then now we're in that whole like no, go the other way. And so now everyone's trying to get out. We'll get to that nice medium soon enough.
Yeah, well, and just kind of touching upon the equity piece, like we have had over the past few years a number of cities and counties saying that we want in language work. You get what you guys are doing is great. Can you do it in Spanish? Can you do it in Mandarin or Cantonese or Vietnamese? And you guys know, like, to do that kind of programmatic work most effectively, you had to be in person. Because to bring out those business owners, like, you have to do door to door and build trust. Otherwise, the idea that you're just going to do it by webinar just doesn't work,
But I will say I did attend the one in Spanish. And
you did? Okay.
Yeah,
right.
the first one that you released in Spanish, and it was phenomenal. It was really good. And it was really good because you could, any business owner, so it could have been the one who has a 50 employee company or just the one sole barber in his barber shop could really understand it. And so I will say, with the lemons that you made for those who needed for access and functional needs, you were able to make that lemonade, because I thought it was really, it was a really good thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. But what I also liked about it and about Outsmart Disaster is you really brought in emergency management too. So you worked with Miss Abby Browning, a person we know well, and with the Business Operations Center and ourselves. And I think that was like probably, and I don't want to speak for you, but probably when you were really more involved in the emergency management local government program.
Yeah.
And I know you blew up, and now you're involved many more, much more. But knowing that and seeing the effects of the business community, how does working with your local emergency manager, your management office, helps business owners prepare and mitigate and respond to any type of disruption, whether it's the power outage, a fire, COVID? How does that? Because I know we have like Outsmart Disaster has templates, but like how working with us. So if you're working, with a city or a local jurisdiction or a state agency, how does that really help, and how can business owners advocate for themselves?
Yeah, I think it's so important. So I've been blessed, partly because of work. I led small business efforts for my department at the state, and so I got the chance to really connect with the network of emergency management personnel. First like directly involved with like fire response, right there at the local assistance centers. So I have the benefit of seeing that firsthand and just how wonderful the community is, and just willing to roll up their sleeves. I think for small business owners, it does behoove them, and I know we talk about this, that it can be hard to see the benefit of it because you are so focused on just the day-to-day operation of your business, right? But being part of your community and helping to boost community resilience means getting to know the emergency management personnel that operate within your city. In some cases, like in my city, South Pasadena, that is the fire chief. I've actually had breakfast with the fire chief and talked about how I can help support it, or be involved, right? I guarantee that if you went into your city's website, you would find information about how to become active around, say, a community group or some type of task force. Maybe the library is even hosting clinics around this, or asking for volunteers to help organize small business owners around emergency management. So all that stuff really does help your bottom line, because the more you become resilient, the more you provide input to your city about what a certain type of disaster will have upon your business, the better they're going to be able to respond and react to that, and to protect you when stuff goes down, right? So I just really encourage the small business owners who might be out there to really get involved with their city, with their local planning, with the local hazard mitigation plans, and also just encourage emergency management not to forget the small businesses, and to understand that small business takes many forms. The most prominent small business, more than likely in your city, is going to be the person working at home. And the best way to reach them is to go literally door by door, introduce yourself, share information about the programming, do, if you have access to their email or even their next door, pages, that's where you want to be. You want to be on Instagram, you want to be on social media, because how they get their information is actually through friends and neighbors. So the more you can use Facebook groups, Nextdoor, all those other social media accounts, TikTok, you're going to be much more effective on engaging them in the process.
That is so true. And we learned that mostly because of 2020, moreover than the past. We're wrapping up, Jesse. I think we could do another half hour, maybe even another 60 minutes on this, but I know
here.
Yeah, there's something that was just released. Please share so we could go and actually, for us as planners, use.
Yeah, absolutely. So the California Association of Local Economic Development has just put out an economic development recovery and resiliency playbook. I helped write one of the chapters, really looking primarily around small business and the impact of disaster on small business and how to involve them in the planning process or resiliency process. But the other sections were written by experts from all different fields. There were people who are very focused around diversity, equity, and inclusion, folks who are really focused around physical infrastructure. So it's just a really great toolbook that really tries to take a holistic look at what it means to be engaged in resiliency from an economic development perspective. You can download it, you can access it, no cost, on the CALED website. If you go to caled.org, you'll find it on there. So it was really a pleasure to be part of that process. And you will even find, I did a case study of a local restaurant just down the street from me. I used them as a case study of how they went through the COVID crisis and what would that was like for them. And I just really encourage you to take a look at that case study because it was very meaningful to me and really important to them. So yeah, just want to encourage everybody to take a look at the playbook. If you have any feedback, we definitely would love to hear it, and hopefully you'll find it to be a useful tool.
This
Awesome.
is definitely very beefy. I went ahead
beefy.
and pulled it up. This
Yeah.
is a really good resource. We'll be sure to drop it into in a link or in a comment. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And wow.
Yeah. Big thanks to
of content.
Khaled. They did a lot of work behind the scenes, also funded by Economic Development Administration. So you have the state and the U.S. government really coming together to focus around small business. So it's great to be part of the project.
And for everybody in Hawaii, Nevada, Arizona, these are resources for you guys too. Just because it's California centric doesn't mean we cannot use everything we've learned from different states here. So please go look. I'm telling you, it's a great resource. It's been a lifesaver for many. This not only this, but Outsmart Disaster also, all of this stuff. And I know time is up, and Isamar is going to wrap us up.
Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for being our guest this episode and sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have, as well as the resources. And thank you to everyone chiming in today. And we owe a big thank you to the man behind the controls. Behind the big screen, we've got Brian at Sitch Radio. Thank you so much for being our awesome producer. And if you have not already, go ahead and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Jack, you want to let them know what we got?
We got Instagram, we got Facebook, we got LinkedIn, we got Twitter. So it's at IAMR9 and get the most recent updates, what's happening on here in our region. And we're featuring Jesse. So if you want to get all this information, please go ahead and click on all our social media platforms where you could get this information. It was a blast. Wish we could have been here longer. This is a great topic. If you want to hear more, email us at the same email that Isamar said earlier. That's Isamar.
Keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking, guys. We appreciate you, Region 9. See you next month.